Welcome to Simplified, the show that's like Nokia. Started a long time ago before it was fashionable and somehow still keeps existing despite better options out there. Welcome to Simplified, the show that's like Adobe Acrobat. It's niche, certainly got its set of supporters, but mostly is still around because people are too lazy to uninstall it. Welcome to Simplified, the show that's a little bit like SAP. Nobody is quite sure what it does or why it's still around, but everyone's just too lazy to ask or do anything about it, including the company admin. Welcome to Simplified, the show that's like the HTC Desire Z, cool at one point of time, now mostly a memory, and mostly still used by two people, one of whom is certainly Jimmy Wales. Welcome to Simplified, the show that's like Google Plus. It's mostly just three engineers actually, but one honorary one. Even Google is taking liberal arts students these days, I hear, talking into the void, into their own circles, not too concerned if others are really listening. And finally, welcome to Simplified, the show that's like Alibaba, highly recommended by Scott Galloway, but pummeled in stock price after being clamped down by Xi Jinping. That's right, Simplified is on the radar of the CCP. Oh, but Simplified is actually a podcast which I actually forgot to write an introduction for. And I am Chuck. Hi.
Oh wow! Well done, Chuck. This is. I think this is quite fitting considering that we've kind of been quite skimpy with our intros previously, so we've just crammed all of them in one right now.
Yeah. But what a journey you've taken us on. And
I realize since it's just since there's one person missing, I guess we can be like Twitter also now, where one of the board is missing at all points of time.
Yeah. Also, I remember this as a line which we had used when I had joined the podcast about how we had transformed from being a bicycle to a dangerously careening chagda.
Yeah. And
now we have got and now we further upgraded to becoming a decentish car, and now we have gone back to being chagda again.
The problem is now that there are four of us, it's easy for the other host to feel lazy about joining in, to the extent where poor Tony had to ride a unicycle the last time. So
yes. So anyway, considering that was Chuck's intro, we should also fashion some minor ones for ourselves. So hi,
but
I'm
first,
Srikeit.
Before that, can I just say, Chuck definitely proved his tech proficiency by calling it SAP and not SAP, which is something.
Please. I still say GIF and not GIF.
Ooh.
It is GIF, dude.
Big conversation.
Definitely GIF.
It's definitely GIF.
Definitely GIF. But yes. So anyway, I'm
GIF
Srikeit,
Bezos.
and that the punster over there is Tony. And yes, this is Simplified. We, besides all the intros, I truly wonder. I mean, that was thoroughly entertaining, Chuck. But I really wonder if there are first-time listeners, or they would have figured out by now what this podcast is about. So, if
each episode is now very different, right? From ice cream
Simplified
to fertilizer.
Let's face it, Simplified is a vibe.
We kind of went past the looking glass in some way when we did the ice cream episode. Now we are truly in the Alice in Wonderland phase of Simplified, where anything can happen here. It's a Monty Python sketch every week.
We are a
and now for something
podcast.
Completely different could also be.
So anyway, Simplified tries to be a show where we talk about interesting things around us, try to break them down with a lot of Wikipedia research, bad jokes, and if Naren is around, yes, minister references.
Yes.
So that's mostly what it is. And today we are going to talk about something related to technology. And before I get there, I would like to ask my esteemed panel, what was the last gadget that you purchased that you were really excited about? I'll start off. For me, it was my needlessly expensive headphones that I bought last year, and I cannot get enough of them.
I would also go the same way. I think it was the pair of headphones, the Sony XM4 headphones, noise cancelling headphones that I got. I was quite excited. I mean, it did a lot of research for it and was quite excited. And honestly, it is. I mean, in a time when technology has become such a throwaway item, this was truly one of the rare occasions that I got excited for a piece of tech after many years.
Cutting through the noise, as it were, because of this excellent.
For me, I guess it would have to be this podcast mic, because I'm not normally very excited by gadgets. So I went all out and splurged on a
Wow.
10K mic. So,
So basically, all three of us are talking about the tech that we are currently using.
Not me.
Effectively.
My
Yeah,
actually,
not you.
not
Yeah,
actually
basically,
not me,
you're
but
not
yeah,
using the stacks. Yeah.
yeah. I don't
basically,
use
Uh,
I
stacks to listen
love
to Simplified.
I
yeah,
love
that's
the
fair.
sound of my own voice, and you like listening to.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah.
Tony,
Okay.
your mellifluous
So,
voice requires the best of tech to listen. So definitely.
So the reason I asked that question is, do you remember a time when we were all excited about buying smartphones?
yeah.
That was
I
a
mean,
beautiful time.
yeah. So the reason,
I'm wondering, Chuck, when we will venture into the hallowed world of the HTC Desire Z.
yeah, we
So
will get there
yeah,
eventually. We will get there eventually
okay.
when we talk through our smartphone journey. So the reason I ask is, so I finally needed to upgrade my phone. My previous Redmi lasted me a good 3 years, which I guess is pretty decent for these days. And I found myself thoroughly uninterested in the whole research process and all that. Usually when you've given yourself 30K or so to buy a gadget, especially folks like us, we'd want to do all the research and get a kick out of comparing and watching reviews and unboxing videos and all that. I couldn't be less interested in do that entire process. Like, yeah, okay, this looks like it's going to last a couple of years at least, let's just go for it. And I very dispassionately settled on a pretty decent phone, the OnePlus 9 Pro. And what was surprising to me was how different this was a few years ago. I think, Srikeit, once long back, I told you that, we celebrate when our phones die out because it means that we can start doing the research process
Yeah,
for the next phone all over again. And I
yeah.
guess that is a different time altogether, but it wasn't really long back, maybe around 2013, 14 or so, where every year you would see something cool new come out.
I would
What
actually say
happened?
that so I mean it is, I think, the golden era of smartphones, so to speak, or like phones being pieces of technology that you were excited about, was probably end of the 2000s decade and the beginning of the last decade, which was the 2010s decade, where I mean I still remember my first phone I got really excited about was when my father bought the Nokia 6600, the granddaddy
Yeah, yeah,
of
yeah.
the granddaddy of smartphones per se, which was a truly open, publicly available smartphone, so to speak. And this 6600 was so my father had he bought the phone and he discovered within 1 week that this is just mystifying him and he doesn't understand what this phone does. And so he kind of threw it down to me. And yeah, so I mean, discovering like how smartphones work, discovering this concept of APKs, and you can install apps on this and you can play different games with it, and discover Bluetooth gaming, which
Yeah.
was mind blowing at that time. Like I used to play with this friend of mine, and like that was the time where I mean, your life revolved around your phone, not in the way that it does in the usage of it, but more about what your phone can do and what all you can do with your phone. So you're constantly like, exactly, like, which is what blows my mind right now. Like if you ask me right now what the RAM of my phone is, I probably won't be able to put
Phones,
my finger
yeah,
on it perfectly.
yeah.
But at one point of time, you had these specs like at the tip of your tongue. You not only knew the specs of your own phone, but you also knew the specs of all your friends' phones, right? So, like, that's the huge evolution, because in some ways, I don't think it matters that much anymore because
Yeah.
they pretty much do the same thing. Tony, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, just two things, right? One, basically, from when we were excited about phones, everyone used to have different phones. Like when you
Yeah.
used to have a 6600 camera in a phone was like a big differentiator.
Yeah,
To,
exactly.
many of us having feature phones. I remember my first Android was probably when it was Jelly Bean or Ice Cream Sandwich, probably one of
Oh,
those.
Mm.
that
But
was
now
another thing, by the way. Yeah,
I don't
sorry,
even
just
know
to
what the
interrupt.
Android version is called right now.
Yeah,
Like,
it was also, I remember a time when the Android, so one thing was the Android versions were all named after sweet dishes and they were
Yeah.
all alphabetical. So you
Correct.
started with like, I think cupcake. I remember from cupcake. I think it was cupcake,
Then there was
donut,
donut. Yeah.
eclair,
yeah,
eclair,
Eclair.
froyo. EFGG was something, I forget.
Golgappa. No.
No,
No,
no. G
it
was
was
something else, but H was
Honeycomb.
Honeycomb.
Honey.
Yes, Honeycomb, which
Yeah.
was a tablet-based thing, which was the first
Yeah.
tablet-based OS. Honeycomb.
I was Ice
Then
Cream
I,
Sandwich.
I was
ice
Ice
J
cream
Cream
was Jelly
Sandwich.
sandwich,
Bean.
jelly
J was
bean.
Jelly Bean,
Kit
and
Kat.
Kit Kat. L. Oh, K. No,
Lollipop.
K was key lime pie.
No, K was
Yes.
Kit
Key
Kit
Kat,
lime.
Kat.
right?
Keyline.
Kit Kat.
Anyway,
Oh yeah, it was Kit Kat. Yeah.
It's okay.
So
We all know the alphabet.
This is pretty much at Kit Kat is where I kind of lost interest, and now I don't know what version of Android my phone uses. It just randomly some days it tells it needs to update, and there's a new version of Android, and I see
and that's
few
it,
menus
right?
changed.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah.
The menu animations change basically.
No, but now everyone's phone is basically the same, right?
Same.
Just like some weird specs that are different, which like nobody really cares about. Except probably this also means that there is a potential for a simplified universe for phone buyers who do just partial research and not necessarily dive deep into the subject before buying them. But can I just say, for anyone who stayed up last night, which was the 31st of May, Rafael Nadal beat Novak Djokovic at the French Open for I don't know the how manyth time, but he will probably win his 14th French Open. And he won his first one in 2005 before the iPhone was launched. So Rafael Nadal is the only guy who has any kind of enthu for the same things they were interested in 2005. So.
Wow, that was a circuitous way to get to that point.
Yeah, like even smartphone announcements have stopped being a big thing, right? Like every year, I think the disconnect between the companies marketing speak versus what it actually, the impact in the market. Like every year they come out with, oh, this is way, way better than what happened last year. But is it really? I mean, Apple keeps hitting its numbers probably because it has a loyal fan base and because a large part of consumption is based with contracts in the US. But other than that, I don't know, man. Like I mean, what is the last great mass adopted smartphone technology that was really like I will go out on a limb and even say that Apple deciding to remove the 3.5 jack, which all of us laughed at one point of time, would have been a bit of an innovation. And maybe
I mean, to be honest, if you think of it this way, actually, like you mentioned, the 3.5 jack, there are a lot of, I mean, what are the breakthrough innovations that actually generate talkability are controversial ones. Like, I don't remember any of the innovations being as controversial before. Everything was an advancement, right?
Yeah.
So everything was just moving the tech forward. So that definitely didn't happen. I'm also conscious of the fact that we are a bunch of men in our mid to late 30s. Maybe, I mean, there is a possibility that we have just outgrown that entire phase. And now there are young people who are still excited about new phone launches and stuff like that. But one thing I do notice about the excitement that does generate around smartphones, and this is particularly an India thing, is that there is a lot of excitement around getting smartphones early, getting smartphones for cheap in the deals, and like there is actually there's almost like some people almost treat it like a sport about every couple of months selling your smartphone and buying a new one and being able to kind of retain value and not have as much of a drop off in value. So they're selling a lot of phones and they're buying a lot more phones in that space. So someone I used to know, a close friend of mine from Ogilvy used to do this as a sport regularly. Like he used to not keep any phone for more than 2 months, right? And every time there was like a new phone that got launched, he would sell his phone and immediately get a new one. And that was his excitement about being able to get a great value for it and be able to kind of keep cycling phones all the time.
So what was the kick
that
he got out of it?
Spy of some kind.
I don't think it was cycling numbers, but sure.
What is the kick that he was getting out of it? Just the fact that he had the latest, greatest phone, or was the act of doing this itself just enough dopamine for him?
No, so I think it was the thing about, see, again, that's the part, right? Like as now phones don't have as many technological advancements or like really differences per se. It's just you get a kick of using a new device every couple of months where you get a slight upgrade in some way or the other.
Sure.
Some phones have the camera better, some phones have a better UX, some phones have extra RAM, some phones
so it's just a change of scenery. So it's just a change of scenery.
Change of scenery every couple of months. And also I feel there is a bit of sport in being able to, I mean, sell and buy, right? You're able to, being able to like sell phones for cheap and then buy them also cheap later in the second-hand market and all that stuff. Buy them for a good value and stuff like that. I think that buying and selling thing is also a sport.
Yeah. So if you see how So if you see how smartphones have evolved over the last few years, right? Like it's not so much evolution as much as just incremental changes every year or so, right? Like the S22 from Samsung is not that drastically different from, say, the S15 or something, even though their marketing speak might make it seem like it can take you to the moon or something like that. Yeah, and when you compound all of it, sure, there's a delta in difference between the S10 and the S22, certainly. But every year it's not so much of a change that happens. And to be fair, there's probably a lot that goes in, going from 2.5 gigahertz to 2.6 gigahertz, except we can't say. But my larger question then is, what is that next technology that's going to really blow our minds? What are smartphones going to be capable of? Like, it's not like innovations haven't been tried in the last few years. It's just that they haven't reached mainstream, or let's face it, like it's just like or maybe it's been a dud. Like I remember a couple of examples. Like you've seen the spate of foldable phones, right? That's been doing the rounds. The Honor or the Huawei, whatever. Even Samsung has one, but these are all ridiculously expensive. The Samsung one, it looks pretty nice, to be honest. The Samsung thing, I saw somebody reading like magazine or something of it, and it looks pretty damn nice. But except it starts at 1.2 lakhs or something like that. That's
and
one.
Also, I mean, I feel, okay, you can fold it and that's the innovation, that's cool. But we already had a phase of people having these large, with the Samsung Note, phablets kind of thing, which is the Samsung Note generation, which, I mean, at the end, at the end of the day, you have to be someone who is comfortable with carrying around that larger device, even if it's foldable, and using it in a public, and be committed enough to use a tablet in public, right? I mean, which is at the moment, at least in India, both a small minority of people and also fairly unfeasible in most areas. Like you don't want to kind of advertise that you're carrying around such a large device to people in public.
Yeah, so that's one kind of, I guess, innovation. The other one, which I was kind of gutted that it didn't actually work out, was the whole modular phone revolution, which was happening in the mid of the last decade. Yeah. So one of the most notable examples that comes to mind was this phone called the Moto Z. Moto just Z, and it was a base phone, and then you could buy various add-ons to it. So if you were into music, then you can buy a speaker attachment. If you're into photography, you could buy an optical lens attachment and a projector, and there were 4 or 5 other things also. I thought it was a pretty cool concept. That was one, and I think Google also had something called Project Aria, if I remember correctly, ARIA, which was a modular phone. And the concept was pretty nice, right? Like you have the base phone, you just swap out components so that environmental waste is less, and whatever component means more to you. Hey, if you're more of a music person, just swap out the DAC. If you're more of a photography person, just put in a better camera. I'm kind of sad that technologies like that, like stuff like that, didn't take off, because if Google and Motorola can't pull it off, it means that it's probably not worth anyone's time. So
no, I mean, I feel that particular thing is it kind of is it indicates that entire space about like how custom phones and like swapping out all these components and putting up that much brain space. Like I don't think phones are still have ever gotten into the space of someone putting enough effort into customizing and recustomizing your phone. Right. Sure. I might, at the very minimum, like first is most people would probably prefer to buy it off the rack, which is what I would call, I mean, probably iPhone enthusiasts who are not even keen on having their phones unlocked, much less modular. Right. So that aspect would definitely be there. And I mean, as you can see, with even the removal of the 3.5mm jack, after the initial uproar, everyone's just adapted to it. It's not like something that's really caused any kind of like drop off, like people have moved away from iPhones or any other phones. Like even my OnePlus phone doesn't have a 3.5mm jack. So, I mean, that's just something that everyone's gotten used to. So, I don't think that modular space ever took off. And speaking of technologies that I was looking forward to taking off, and which I still believe is the next revolutionary step in smartphones, was what Google Glass tried to do.
Yeah.
Right. So what Google Glass tried to do and failed spectacularly, or I mean, for the privacy reasons, but I feel is eventually inevitable in some way, is that, the one thing is there is going to come a time when people are going to find carrying these large bricks around as inconvenient.
Sure.
Right. And whether that becomes some kind of floating liquid crystal display, or that you can expand, or a retinal implant of some sort, or, I mean, not a cyborg looking device like the Google Glass. And but I feel there is the next step has to be something where the screen or the phone device itself is replaced with a chip and a screen that's implanted on your retina in some way or the other.
Wow. Yeah. I think so. Before we get there, and I definitely want to talk about future kinds of, what might replace a smartphone. What do you guys think about? What do you guys think about phones which are like sort of like targeted to a slightly niche audience who are unapologetic about who they are going for, right? I'll give you a couple of examples. You probably heard of XDA Dev, right? The site
XDA Dev, of course, yeah.
So a few years back to it in 2020, XDA Dev actually announced a phone of their own. They polled the community and they came out with a phone called the Pro 1X. The Pro 1X, and Srikeit, you in particular are going to love this. It's a phone that has a physical keypad.
Ooh,
yeah.
Wow.
So it's been in the rounds for a while. So while researching for this episode, I was wondering, hey, like, what's the state with this? So it's still on Indiegogo. So they plan to ship it in July 2022, and I see that it's raised 112 crores. Oh, wait, wow, 112 million. That's a lot of money. 112 million rupees. Sorry, Indiegogo
is it just like an old Kindle?
No, it's a smartphone with a proper keyboard, which is sliding out and stuff like that. And it's not clearly not for the mass audience. It's got Ubuntu Touch and a very some very rooted version of Android or something like that.
I mean, kind of phone, had they launched it modular, I'm sure that would have gotten great traction.
Yeah, so that's one, again, very clearly targeted a niche audience. I think for a while, Garmin had a phone that was targeted towards people who were, sort of like the GoPro audience, which is slightly tougher and all that.
Right.
And at some point of time, I don't remember one, but I'm sure there must be some smartphone or the other that is targeted to audiophiles. People who, if you go onto Headphone Zone, you'll find these ridiculously priced Astel & Kerns that are sell for 1 lakh, 2 lakh or something. And honestly, the big difference over there is the digital, is the DAC.
Basically build a smartphone around a DAC.
Yeah, smartphone around that. Strangely enough, by the way, the original Galaxy, the Samsung Galaxy S. The Galaxy S, S1, the first one, it's apparently revered by audiophiles because the DAC that it uses, the digital to audio converter that it uses, is apparently a very high-end one. I still have one lying around with me somewhere because I used to have a S at some point, and I tried to use it. The problem is the software just makes up for any efficiencies that the DAC comes. Similarly, the PlayStation 1 is also apparently very valued by audiophiles, and I've actually seen setups where people have put these huge $10,000 speakers and huge hi-fi setup, and the CD is playing off a original PlayStation. So technology is weird that way.
I also remember that there was a time when there was a Sony Ericsson music phone at some point.
Yes, I remember, with the Walkman icon.
The Walkman one, which actually there were a lot of audiophiles at the time who were talking about the quality of the speakers of those phones.
Yeah.
And how well the audio quality was getting rendered by how well the audio was getting rendered by it and stuff.
Yeah.
So those phones also at one point of time were pretty revered by audiophiles.
Yeah, and I think all of this goes back to what you were saying first, because all of these pretty much came around in that era where it was nice seeing just people experiment with, stuff. Maybe the most exciting phone right now is Motorola bringing back the Razr, but at a price point of 80-90K, I don't think too many people are going to buy something like that. So you don't see that level of experimenting right now.
Does anyone remember Motorola Iridium, which is like their satellite phone project? It's a spectacular fail.
I remember Motorola Iridium precisely for their advertisement, which actually their print ad was actually taught as in advertising classes, where their print ad, the headline that was written was one of the most beautiful ones, which said, when they launched the phone, the headline was, "Today geography becomes history."
Yeah.
Wow.
Basically, their idea was that you didn't need cell phone towers, right? It was direct satellite connection. The only problem was you couldn't answer calls from buildings or cars, so you had to step out because you had to be in point of sight for satellites. So
you had to be in the middle of a jungle with clear line of sight to the sky.
All this being said, we might have been very uncharitable towards software developers while we were talking about how phones have basically become boring, because over the last few years, while hardware has possibly hit a peak, it's likely that the software has gotten better and better. And one area where we're seeing this is especially with cameras and night capabilities. I remember watching a nice Vox video on how in the span of just about 5 or 6 years, night photography has got so much better on smartphones. And this is not because of any massive change in hardware. It's mostly because of software. In fact, the OnePlus that I bought today, it's a OnePlus 9 Pro, and it's actually, the camera is actually developed in collaboration with Hasselblad.
It's a Hasselblad camera.
Yeah, but the thing is this, Hasselblad hasn't developed any hardware for it. They've provided software and the ideas for how to make. So that's the interesting, at least that's what I think. At least that's what the OnePlus literature says. And that's interesting, right? Like whether more innovations happening on the software side of things rather than hardware. You remember, guys, so back, and by the way, Nokia, let's face it, during that period, during 2002 to 2006-7 till the iPhone came, Nokia was untouchable when it came to different kinds of formats. That gaming phone, the 6600, they had this brilliant, they had this phone called the N90, where it was a flip phone, and they actually managed to fit an optical zoom inside the axis. So you can you had to like shoot it at this awkward angle, but they fit that was genius, man. That was just genius. And that point of time, that phone cost 30,000 or something. And I remember one guy in our office talking about it, buying it, and we're like, wow, really? You actually went and bought a phone for 30,000 rupees?
Speaking of buying phones for 30,000. Yeah, go on. Sorry, if you went on.
No. It's a slightly different point. But I was saying, basically, I think hardware innovations have moved on from the mobile phones to other wearables and targeting the body real estate, as they call it, right? So biohacking is the new fad, which Chuck left a while back. But anything to do with, smartphones, or like Srikeit spoke of Google Glass or retinal implants or whatever, I'm guessing that's the next frontier. And for software on phones, basically a lot of what you do is going to be apps that are going to be just developed outside of the phone company itself, right? So
I think that's something that we should possibly discuss after taking a tiny bit of a break.
Sure. Yeah, let's take a break.
Okay.
And welcome back to Simplified. We are delving into the world of smartphones, the way our personal journeys through their evolution, our lack of interest with their hardware evolution now, and the reasons for it and the future as well. So speaking of the evolution of our smartphone journeys, let's delve into our own journeys of the smartphone evolution. So I started off, my very first phone was the Reliance Zero Money Plan phone, which was that the night calling is free phone which they gave, which had no SIM, and it was a CDMA phone. If you remember, there was CDMA and GSM phones. So that was a CDMA phone. That was the very first phone that I had. Post which I migrated to the Nokia 6600, which was, pretty iconic phone in smartphone history. The Nokia 6600 then moved to the Sony Music Walkman phone, a Sony Ericsson Walkman phone. And after the Sony Ericsson Walkman phone, I had, I used the Sony Ericsson Walkman phone all through college. And just as I was starting, work was, through my college, just as I was starting at my final year of college was when I got the first big screen smartphone that I got was the HTC Desire Z, which was beautiful. Like it was the first phone I actually ended up buying because I wanted to buy, and I did research on it, and I made conscious decisions to buy. And once I got the HTC Desire Z, it's been pretty linear. So from the HTC Desire Z, I moved to the Google Nexus.
Nice.
Google Nexus. Then I went to the next version. I think the Nexus 4 or something it was called. I moved to the next Nexus. And from there, OnePlus 1, OnePlus 3, OnePlus 6, and OnePlus Nord. Now,
wow.
So been on the OnePlus train since. So that is my smartphone evolution. You guys want to take it?
So my first phone I remember was I don't remember the exact model. It was a Nokia phone with antenna and stuff like that. And I was very excited because I had got my first Airtel SIM and stuff like that. And here's the
Did you get Doordarshan on it?
FM radio must have been there.
No, I don't think so. I don't think it's really long back. So here's the thing, okay? The phone was incompatible with Airtel. Airtel was so cool that they said, no, we won't work on all these old phones. So I had to actually go and get whatever 3310 or whatever it was. So started off with the usual thing. 1100 was legendary. And in college, one of the things that I did was I actually removed, we did all these crazy things and Nokia could take it, right? So I would remove the cover of the 1100 and I would put it just in a plastic case, and my friends would call it the iRobot, and used to walk around with a transparent phone. Dude, that Nokia 1100 could take anything.
So
Then
sorry,
after that,
sorry, one interruption on the 1100 and the 3310. My other friend went to engineering college where there was a rule. It was literally a rule, unwritten rule in the hostel circles that if you didn't own a 3310 or a 3315, your phone is fair game to get stolen, and nobody can do anything about it. So you
good
had
heavens.
to own only one of those two phones because that was the hostel uniform. But anyway, sorry, go on.
Amazing. So then after that, like a usual bunch of phones, and I think I got really excited when Nokia launched this E-series. I don't know if you guys remember. Those were like the like Nokia's answer to BlackBerry in some way, and I was really excited about those. I was the E51, E60. I remember like. With my internship money or something, I went to the streets of like the phone market in Jamshedpur or something. I was doing my internship over there at that time. And I bought like this old E63 or whatever, E53 or something, which had a full keypad and stuff. And I went through second year of Mica with that. And people were like, damn, oh, you got a BlackBerry. Like, no, this is Nokia's cheaper version of that. And then after that, HTC Desire Z was my first smartphone. Bought it on the day after your recommendation because I was just desperate to get onto the Android.
This is me, my first day of meeting Chuck, really. Okay, I started my internship at the company that Chuck was working at. He takes one look at my phone and I give him my sales spiel for about 30 seconds. And the next day he turns up toting the phone saying, I just had to go and buy it. So
because my previous phone was almost on his last legs anyway. And then after that,
actual influencers, Srikeit.
Hey, for a point of time, Srikeit's email signature had something like I'm an HTC fan or something like that. Like you can't.
This is clearly when Liverpool were doing badly.
Yeah, you can't buy loyalty like that. Anyway, then after that, I don't know, Motorola, OnePlus, bought a Redmi last time. I think apart from an iPhone, just shifted through all the other brands, I guess. And now happily settled back on OnePlus today. Quite dispassionately, I may add, but it's what it is.
Just on the two, and I don't know about Tony's journey yet, but just on the two of our journeys, it may be so different from a lot of our users who must be using iPhones right from the beginning. I mean, iPhone 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 or something like that.
Privileged kids. Anyway. You could use iPhone from the beginning and you're using it to listen to Simplified. Go do something useful.
Anyway, Tony, your journey. Go on.
My first phone was actually unique. It was a Nokia, but it was a Nokia 5210. And it was like an orange colored phone. Actually, you could change the cover and colors and stuff like that. I don't know, but I had an orange one.
I think unofficially you can do that to any Nokia.
Orange color phone.
No, but Google Nokia 5210. It's a very unique phone. And then of course I had
wow, this is a sexy looking phone. Yeah, I remember this.
Yeah.
Here's the amazing thing. By the way, anyone wants to play this game, you can put Nokia --0 into Google Images and you will find a model. Nokia had so many models that any combination of numbers led to a phone. But
you can't basically create a username with Nokia something number on any.
Yes, carry on. 5210.
Yeah, 5210, then 1100 as is usual. And that was that the first phone with a flashlight, like a torch?
I think so. At least the one that was advertised. I remember the iconic ad for it also, hanging in front of the truck and the light was on. It was made for India, dust-free and all that. I mean, that was an iconic device.
It truly was a phone that was made for India. I mean, you could literally, it was so, like they used to say that it's the only phone that actually gets network in basements, and that, and also the fact that whenever like they used to be like कभी झगड़ा अगर जो तुम्हारा झगड़ा बहुत होता है किसी के साथ तो फिर फोन लेकर मारो वो नोकिया होगा तो जिंदा रहेगा.
One of the things I loved the most about old Nokia phones was composing ringtones in them. There was a certain joy, especially like at that point of time, I was just starting to learn the guitar and stuff also. So just getting into all the notes and stuff like that. But I remember getting the kick out of composing Californications, or rather recomposing Californication. Intro, the little bass and guitar intro, and people were like, where did you get that from? Where did you download that from? Like, I composed it on Nokia's ringtone composing thing. And then after that, there was another. So when the better phones, like the Nokia E50 and all that, they still couldn't support MP3 for ringtones, but they could support MIDI. They could support MIDI.
Yes.
Right. So at that point of time, I was learning guitar using a software called Guitar Pro, which basically has, your MIDI tracks of all your famous songs, so you can play along with them and stuff like that. And I wasn't a very good guitar player, but I used to play around with Guitar Pro quite a lot because it used to fascinate me. So what I would do is I would extract just the parts of the song that interested me from there, and I would extract that as a MIDI, and I would use that as my ringtone. So for a point of time, I would have like all the famous guitar solos as my ringtones, like Comfortably Numb would be there, Sultans of Swing would be there. And it was quite cool listening to it as a sort of like a MIDI version coming out of a phone like that. And then when ringtones started becoming a thing and people just started using MP3s, like, all these kids. It's interesting how ringtones have died out, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, Tony, sorry, back to
much like the charm of the T9 dictionary.
Yeah. Charm of the T9?
T9 dictionary, if you remember. Like,
of course.
You had to use it in class, but also like you can't, you have to basically type without looking at the phone.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And, like,
arguably, I'd say it's easier to do that than it is to type without looking on a full keyboard.
Yeah.
But
it was legendary. How did you do it such a thing?
Yeah, come to think of it, how much like we have and probably an entire portion of our brain which was so heavy. We built so many neural pathways to type on key9 so effectively, and now that is an entire skill set that's just garbage in our brains.
Wow. Wow. I'm just saying, you're absolutely right. Neural pathways.
We construct. It was a skill that was developed. Like, I remember. I wasn't digging heavy texter, but I know of people who used to text, like who used to write probably essays and books they were written on T9. Right.
And we couldn't resort to using like SMS language and all that. It's only full as it is, everyone had full sentences, full words. As it is, we were all on generous SMS packs.
Free SMS packs. Wow,
but do you remember, go on with your journey?
Even the smileys on those were very, very charming. If you remember, just like colon, close parenthesis.
I still use those actually. Sometimes people are like, what is this weird thing you're using?
Me too.
I get very annoyed when WhatsApp or whatever it is converts my colon and bracket into an emoticon. I get very annoyed.
Anyway, from 1100 I swiftly moved on to one of the Nokia N series phones. My first job. Then I moved on to Nokia E71, I want to say, one with the keypad.
E71, yeah. Physical key.
Then I won a free Android phone in some B school contest. Then I moved to the HTC One V, which was an interesting one, which had like a weird, sort of curve or slant at the bottom of the phone. And since then, I've stood in queues for not physical queues, but online queues for getting OnePlus One. Remember when you needed an invite to buy your first
to get a OnePlus? So bad. OnePlus, I think right at the beginning, I still use them as examples of how to do how they kind of did marketing, like in both guerrilla methods as well as traditional methods.
Yeah,
like they were just spectacular with that whole the flagship killer positioning, and then went out like OnePlus One, OnePlus Two, OnePlus Three they were just sold out on hype. Like that was just next level of marketing at that time.
Yeah, and then the whole branding around the red cable and all that. I think they're pretty brilliant at what they do.
The red cable club and all that stuff that they have done around it. So Tony, you had OnePlus. What is your OnePlus journey?
I think OnePlus One, I think OnePlus 3, OnePlus 5, and now currently OnePlus Nord or whatever.
Wow, so the three of us are using OnePlus, and I have a feeling Naren also uses a OnePlus. Wow, this is like...
Wow, this is like, if anyone is like trying to geek out about iPhones or all that, this is the wrong podcast. None of us are iPhone. I've ever been iPhone users.
Okay, so let me ask you guys, have you ever considered buying an iPhone? And I'll tell you that I very, very seriously actually considered buying one this time. One, because I just thought I wanted a better camera. And let's face it, the iPhone is the best camera out there. And two, again, I just wanted a change of scenery. I thought, okay, it's been with Android for so long. And gone are the days when I want to proclaim myself an Android fanboy and all that.
I thought you said privacy also.
Yeah, like screw that.
I am one person who has. I don't know. I don't know if there is anyone else right now, but I am probably the one person who has bought the most number of Apple devices, but never ever even used one.
Oh
I
yeah,
have
you
bought
bought them
them
for
for
various
other
people,
people.
for
Yeah,
other
like I
people,
bought
right?
them for my parents, my
Beautiful.
mother, father, my wife. All of these people use Apple products. I buy them for I buy those products. I research them for them. I even help them like troubleshoot them at times. But I have never ever, even for a single day, touched an Apple product in my life.
Yeah, so the thing is this, I've always been like, hey, okay, just for the change of scenery, and anyway, these phones now last for a good 3 years or so, right? As of the latest one. So I was very, very seriously considering buying an iPhone this time, but it's just that again, the price just becomes, once you see, oh, starts at 64K, I could probably cough that up. But by the time you have something meaningful added to it, plus the warranty, which is a whole 25K separately, it crosses into six figures, and you're like, nah, let's not do that.
And
I
for
had
me,
forgot. In
yeah.
between, I had a Google Nexus 4, and I'm
Oh.
surprised neither of you have ever experimented with a Google Pixel, which is also supposedly like.
Yeah,
So
but also expensive, right? And
yeah,
plus,
so
the 6 isn't available in India yet at the time of this recording. So
yeah, and for me, I mean, I think from what I get from the OnePlus series, and it's always been like from the OnePlus One, I have never found my phone lacking in any department that I would. I mean, see, one thing is, yes, one thing I will give it hands down to the iPhone. It has a superior camera. For some reason, the iPhone cameras always seem to work better than any of the Android cameras with any consistency I've ever seen. But I
doesn't
have never
Sony
one.
only make their cameras?
Yeah, it's weird, but I don't. It's their software, I guess, that
Yeah.
allows the pictures to get rendered better or whatever. But from my perspective, I'm never a big smartphone picture
Sure.
taker in any which way. So for me, the camera needs to be functional. It can take a decent picture once in a while. And OnePlus really stepped up its game after OnePlus 6 on how good
Yeah.
how well their cameras work. So they are decent camera phones as well. And on other performance, OnePlus just like leaves everyone else in the dust from in my estimation. Like when I've seen people struggling with whatever on their phones, like my OnePlus Nord is like a year and a half old, and it can chew up all of the crap that I throw at it. So I mean that performance wise, I don't think anyone can really touch OnePlus in my estimation, and I've never been unhappy with it at all.
So I have a different question. When was the last time any of you bought a phone because it was new, or it was coming out, or it was launched, or because I bought my last 3 or 4 phones because the last one broke and I had to.
Same.
Yeah.
I think same here.
For me, it was the last desire-based purchase was the HTC Desire Z.
Desire itself. Srikeit, you remember when we were coming back from that trek that we did in Goa or something? My Motorola fell out of the train, and I had to buy a phone that day. If you remember, that was like
I remember that.
Yeah, but you're right.
The biggest Easter egg though, which Chuck referenced in his opening intro, is that in the same year when Chuck and I both bought our HTC Desire Z, I ended up traveling for Wikimania to Israel, Haifa, Israel, and where I met Jimmy Wales, the founder of Wikipedia. And one piece of, in the brief conversation we had, he took one look at my phone and he's like, "Hey, I have the same phone as well." So at that time, the only 3 people I knew who owned HTC Desire Z were Chuck, Jimmy Wales, and me.
And if I'm not mistaken, Jimmy Wales is born on August 7th as well. I'm just So we are.
Wow, all August buddies as well.
All August buddies as well. Wow, so there is something to this. Yeah.
So anyway, that segue aside, but I mean, it's not that my phone. I mean, it's waned between. My phone has gotten old. I mean, sometimes the reasons may be a little less pressing than others. Like, okay, it's just gotten old, or I'm getting a good deal, or something like that. Like the reason I bought the OnePlus Nord was because in Malaysia there is a tax break that you get for buying technology.
Oh, okay.
All right. So, like, you can buy a smartphone and you get like a tax break on that smartphone. And before the end of the financial year, I was like, okay, I don't have any piece of tech that I bought this year. So, my phone isn't, I mean, it may last another 6 months. So, let me just buy a phone because I can claim it as a tax break. So, I mean, very, very adulting reasons to buy a phone.
Sure.
But
speaking of breaks,
yes.
Speaking of
let's
breaks,
take one.
yes, let's take one, and we'll see you on the other side of this.
So welcome back to Simplified, and we are talking about just technology in general, I suppose. So we've spent a lot of time talking about phones, what excited us and all that. And from when I had the idea for this episode, I had no doubts that this would turn into sort of us, this being a lot of love for old Nokia. I think that has come out very nice.
Nostalgia.
So it's quite clear that we and many other people, maybe the industry in general, if are not very excited by smartphones. In fact, if you Google this term, right, like why are smartphones boring these days? I don't get excited about smartphones. There are lots of Reddit threads, a lot of articles, editorials on CNET and things like that. So what are the spaces then that you guys, maybe you personally might not be interested in, but still you think that, hey, there's a lot of action happening over here? Like Srikeit, for instance, you play console games, for instance.
Yeah.
Like, is there stuff happening
Definitely.
over there?
So that's exactly what I was going to get into. For me, I think the new frontier, like that excitement of like, oh my God, this is stuff we have not seen before, is coming out as far as gaming is concerned, in terms of not just gaming as like, it's not just the tech of gaming, but it's the marriage of tech with actual like real life, like real storylines, the art of it, the graphic art for it, the motion capture for it. Like there is a huge. I feel games are the next frontier as far as art is concerned overall, as well as like performance art and like just capturing so many different art forms in one particular expression, and coupled with the user engagement. So yes, so recently there was a game called Horizon Forbidden West, which was a sequel for Horizon Zero Dawn, another open world game that was getting launched, which is now apparently going to get converted into a web series actually, which is going to be hosted by Netflix. Was just announced last week. So when that game launched and when I played that game, it was mind blowing. Like the experience I had, like you have goosebumps, you cry with the game, you like when the storyline goes a certain way. Like I was saying, there's another game that I played called Red Dead Redemption 2. Right? In that game, like you are a cowboy in the Wild West, which is fast fading away into the modern world, right? And so in that, like there was one scene where he's towards the end where he's running away from all of that, and then suddenly like there's a cut scene where your horse falls off and your controller vibrates when the horse leaves you, and then the horse dies over there in front of you, your horse which you have ridden throughout the entire game. And I shed a tear. I was like, oh my God, like my horse died. I was like, I'm crying for a video game horse. What is wrong with me? But yeah, it was designed in such a beautiful way, the experience. And similarly, another experience that I had was in another game called Uncharted, where you're exploring caves and stuff. So I entered a cave somewhere, and I'm holding this torch, and that torch occasionally flickers, and it's a dark cave, right? And you get in in one area, and you're just walking, and suddenly your torch flickers out. So you're staring at a black screen, holding your controller. You can feel. I thought, did the current go off, or what happened, right? And then I'm just standing there, and I'm like, where do I go? What do I do? And then there's a small icon that comes over there, which shows an animation of you thumping your controller. And then I realized, like what you would do when you were holding a torch that goes out, I held my controller and thup it on my other hand, and the torch came back on.
That's insane.
Right. So I was just like, it blew my mind. So the way technology is going as far as games are concerned and the innovations that they are getting in place, that is the new frontier for me.
Yeah. In fact, this is another episode that I wanted to do with you guys. I'm surprised we haven't done one already, because while I don't play games, I'm constantly fascinated by how gaming has become so prominent in the last few years. In fact, this is lovely article that I keep talking about, which is which was in The Guardian, which is that gaming is this generation's rock music, or basically gaming drives Gen Z's pop culture, basically, where they discover music through it, they create communities through it. And to your point, Srikeit, it's not just about better gameplay and all that, but it's also the changing culture around gaming, right? It's no longer one person in a basement playing. It's a lot more competitive. Storylines are sophisticated. The audiences are different.
And I haven't even touched on multiplayer gaming, which is a whole different universe.
I think let's do a separate episode on gaming itself, because there's just so much to talk about over there. What do you think about virtual reality devices and stuff like that? Like, I don't know, Oculus, HTC Vive. Do you think that's...
I find them like very, very boring, to be honest, beyond a point. They are, and not very exciting since the time they've come about. I would have expected there to be so much more to AR and VR, but nothing's pretty much changed in the last few years.
So for me, to be honest, I haven't really. I had a mild fascination more than the Oculus and all that. I had a mild fascination when VR came out, especially with the scalability potential of like the
Cardboard.
cardboard VR sets and how that would go ahead. But still, recently only where I am looking at, again, from a gaming point of view, where PlayStation VR has started picking up a little bit more.
Yeah.
Also, the other aspect of how you can kind of like use it from marketing purposes, how VR is
Yeah.
used in marketing purposes. There's a great example of how VR was used to administer vaccines to little kids in Brazil, which was where they were actually shown a story, a fairy tale, and where they are the hero. And at one point of time, the story actually says that we have to give you a potion that will help you defeat the enemies, and that's where
So cute.
the nurse actually wears a corresponding VR kit, which tells them when to put cotton, when to give the injection, all of that stuff. So it's a beautiful marketing way of using VR. And additionally, now I would get a lot more interested. I have the potential for getting interested. My wife has recently joined a company that shall not be named, but they are pretty deep into some kind of VR stuff as well. And so there is a potential for possibly procuring a VR headset. So I'm quite excited about that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and
Actually,
yeah,
this
let
is
us know how it goes.
one cool thing that I saw, which I can't really remember now, but it was basically a car. But I like the use of VR there, which was that there's a car that was on display, and you could get into it and wear the VR headset, and you'd feel
Hmm.
like it's being driven at extremely high speeds and dangerously, and you get out 2 minutes later and you're pumping and stuff like that, right? Except
Yeah.
they didn't do anything on VR; they just put a race
They
car
didn't,
driver.
yeah.
And
So this was,
actually,
yeah. So this was done by, this is one of my favorite examples of VR being used for marketing or not used for marketing. This is done by Jaguar in Australia a few
Yeah.
years ago. Yeah, the deception VR is, so yeah, so VR
Yeah.
can be used for marketing in cool ways or just, giving experiences like this. But you're right, as a consumer product, you always feel like, for a long time, I've thought that VR devices eventually will become ubiquitous. There was a point of time when we thought, hey, smartphones is unlikely that everyone will need something like that. And now we can't imagine life without it. And for me, it always felt like VR is one of those things where it's just a matter of enough money coming into the space. And once you have enough use cases, people will find a need to buy this, and then the devices will get cheaper. And maybe there will come a day where you have 10K virtual reality devices that take you to virtual meetings, take you to virtual concerts, whatever the case may be. And for all you know, that might still end up happening. And that could be pretty exciting, I guess.
Yeah. And just as, the other thing is about the point about technology adoption, it works in funny ways. One example which we talked about earlier be Google Glass, which was expected to completely revolutionize the world of how
Yeah.
phones and how phones and technology will be used, but pretty much turned out to be a damn squib. The more interesting case I find is something about around QR codes. QR
Yeah.
codes started off as a fascination, as a novelty really. Like they were expected to become really big and like a way where the physical world meets the digital world. They waned in their popularity and were kind of there. And then since COVID happened, now QR codes are everywhere. They are the way you
Yeah.
use your phone and the way you interact with the digital environment in the physical world. And so
still a
technology,
horrible experience, man. QR codes.
I hear you.
Like
It
I
can be.
saw Dunzo's stunt last week, and I'm like, please. I mean, sorry, Dunzo, but like, I mean, what are you
Sorry, I
trying to
didn't.
do?
I don't know. I didn't see what the stunt was about.
They basically did a Coinbase.
Coinbase did some like
The
stud
15
ad
second,
apparently.
the 15. So
So
Coinbase had put the QR code during the
Yeah,
Super
the
Bowl.
Super
These guys
Bowl
did
ad.
it
Yeah,
during
yeah, I saw.
these guys did it during
Oh,
the IPL final. That's pretty much about it.
yeah. So
I
I
mean,
know.
like
I hear that.
the problem with QR code is right. Like it's one of those things that you can, as a agency or like some ad guy, pitch to a marketing team to say, it's a cool thing to do. It is a horrible customer experience. Nobody. I mean, I like hate QR codes with a vengeance. Maybe that's just me. Like it's like really really unwieldy to use. It
No,
doesn't
I
serve any
fully
purpose.
agree with that. I fully agree with that. But what happened over the pandemic is because of the number of systems that suddenly integrated QR, which were critical for people to use, right? And
Yeah.
even now, when you go to if you were to go to restaurants or a lot of different
Yeah.
places, you're required to scan a code. And I fully agree with the aspect of that. not too many people have really worked on improving the user experience of the QR code, how it's used and how it can work. But the thing is, the adoption has become ubiquitous, and that initial barrier of understanding how to use the technology despite its barriers has kind of been crossed. And so, for the lack of a better technology replacing it right now, it seems to be the best thing that you have to connect the physical world to the digital one. And in that context, which is what I feel like, where I feel VR could be something that has come across and has been around for a while now. Like, it's not something that's very new. Even the Oculus headsets haven't been something new. But like, it takes is for one of those metaverse projects to really take off or provide a service or provide something that's unique for the critical adoption potential to switch, and suddenly it will become ubiquitous.
Yeah. I mean, there are so many. I mean, we can do a separate episode itself on just that, right? What else? What are the other, like, do you think there are any? I mean, we can't predict. We don't work at Andreessen Horowitz. So, like, do you think,
lots of potential in home automation and even cars, where technology is like lagging behind severely, right? Despite like cars being priced higher and higher, and like most people now own like a pretty highly priced car which should have like decent inbuilt technology. Like I think those two definitely, like, we'll see some mass adoption in India, hopefully. Because technology in cars is really low end, if you ask me. Or maybe I'm just driving a low end car.
No, it's true. I mean, I fully agree with the cars argument, especially with, like, I mean, the point is about how for all its whatever other controversy might come across, the Tesla as a car seems to really come across as a more futuristic piece of tech, is because fundamentally the cars that you're driving on the road, more often than not, if you're driving a regular non-electric vehicle, you're driving with the addition of maybe a couple of chipsets and a couple of integrated circuits, about 100-year-old tech, right? You're literally driving that with better cushioning and air conditioning, right? So that is what you're driving, because that fundamentally that internal combustion engine has not been improved upon, and which is also another thing, because it's also some amount of lobbying and like reluctance of the industry to move away from it. So as we start adopting newer technologies and stuff like that, there is a lot of reimagining that can be done as far as cars are concerned. And
another space
is concerned,
and another space, I think, and maybe we should close with this. We've already been rattling on for an hour, but I think one place that we are going to see a lot of interesting stuff come up in the next few years is going to be over-the-counter healthcare tech. And I think there's going to be a lot of that. We've already had, like if you consider, the iPhone is the most popular ECG device in the world, which is pretty crazy if you think about it.
Really?
Recently. Yeah, I mean, there's some stat like that. I mean, I'm guessing the average person doesn't really have any other, heart monitoring device or whatever, and the iPhone apparently does that. So I guess so. Then recently, there's been this spate of continuous glucose monitors that connect to your with a sexier interface, like the Ultra Human, for instance. Jury's still out as to whether people need that and all that. And I myself,
and I feel the industry is also primed, because I feel industries that have had a setback always tend to be more resilient, like with the Theranos incident. Now that there is a lot more responsibility in the medical technology field. And so I think the progresses are going to be a lot more vetted and a lot more like going through a lot more rigorous processes before they can
that and more importantly, you have tailwinds in terms of societal acceptance, right? Over the last 2 years, you've just seen people like whatever, for health we are willing to do whatever it takes. So I think I see this happening in two broad ways, right? One is going to be diagnostics at home, where you either use machines for monitoring what's happening inside you, or it's going to be more for quick fixes where you don't need to go to a hospital. I will be very surprised by the end of the decade if we don't have something like a personal vitamin pill or something like that, right? Taking into account whatever is happening inside your body, some machine or the other makes you like a morning pill, which has exact amount of vitamins and phosphorus and other minerals, etc., that you need. I wouldn't be surprised something like that happens.
And just to add on to that, like even though Theranos when this thing, and I saw the Theranos documentary, the HBO Theranos documentary, and as part of Theranos' intro, they actually made a really good point about what the raison d'etre of Theranos was, where it says that at the moment, the way medicine works is that we are currently taking snapshots of our health, right? So we are taking photographs of our health at a particular point in time and making decisions of
based on that.
Based on that photograph. So what Theranos set out to do was, instead of seeing a snapshot of your health, why not see a movie? Right?
Which is basically exactly what Ultra Human also says. Instead of taking decisions at one point of time, see how your glucose varies throughout the day and then make decisions. So pretty much exactly what you said.
So in this context, I mean, as technology progresses, and that's going to be, like you said, the personalized vitamin pill, which is based on every day, like, oh, you're a little low on potassium, here's adding a little more potassium to your pill, and you're a little low on something else, here's a little more. Even, I mean, I see that with my father. My father takes insulin regularly, and he has to adjust his units based on just some information that he takes randomly. And he's like, okay, am I feeling sweating or whatever like that? And I take a little less insulin or more insulin. Just your body, like technology that allows you to adaptively know how many exact units of insulin you need to take for whatever else. And probably even administering that dose without you knowing it is the future.
No, I think this is a good episode to do with.
But just on the pill thing, right? Interestingly, we are talking on June 1st, 2022. Mm-hmm. July 31st, 2022 is the day when George Jetson will be born. So,
wonderful. I think
the future.
We should call it an episode over here, boys. We have covered quite a bit. We have gone all the way from smartphones to personalized vitamin pills. I think that's quite that's quite the arch. I have no idea how to
from not even smartphones. We've gone from Nokia 1100 to personalized.
Or whatever that phone was of mine which refused to take in a cool Airtel SIM. So I don't know how Naren would end this episode. So I think each of us should give it our own try. I would say stay safe, stay T9, stay simplified. That was a very bad one. So Tony, please do a better one.
No pressure. Stay safe, stay teched, and stay simplified.
Stay smart was there, and
I'll say stay safe, stay auto updates on, and stay simplified.
Very good, excellent. Yeah, very well done. All right, I don't think we'll top that.
Just 3 times. Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Write in with your phone stories.
Yes.
And we'll see you.
Bye.
Bye.